If you stop too soon, you rob yourself of the opportunity to overcome. That is a direct quote from our guest, Steve Spinelli. He's next on Purpose Under Pressure. The heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people who swing their feet out of bed every morning on purpose and what happens and what they do when those daily storms come along, trying to knock them off their pace. And so that's what this show is all about. If you're listening right now, would you do me a favor? Give us a like or a follow or a subscribe, or maybe even just tell a friend. I want people to know this show's out there. You're there. You're listening. Hopefully you like it. Let's let other people know too. So if you can share that, subscribe, it really does help us get this message out and inspire and motivate other business and organization leaders as well. So thank you for that. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations, also Jacksonville, Florida. They are one of the highest performing Sandler sales training affiliates in the nation, and they will make a difference for you and your team. If your job is sales, if your job is revenue, if your job is just trying to run a great organization, check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Steve Spinelli. He's the president of Unipro Painting in Bedford, Ohio. And if you wonder how I find my guests and how I find people and find new folks, Steve was doing some things on LinkedIn that said, man, that to me, that guy's got some purpose going on. That guy is more than just about running a business and dollars and cents and things. He's trying to build something big. And I literally just wanted to meet him and see what he was all about. And so we had some connections and we did that. And now we are friends. And I welcome you, Steve Spinelli of Unipro Painting. Welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Well, hey, Brian, I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. And I really look forward to this opportunity. I was really excited from the first time we spoke that, you felt that there was enough interest in what we're doing over here that you wanted to dig in a little bit. So again, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I can tell. I can tell some things sometimes. I think I've been doing this a little while, and I can tell when a business has something else going on behind the scenes a little bit. And so I am glad we talked as well. And I'm excited. Sometimes I'll let you know a little dirty secret about this show is I don't always like to know all the answers to the questions I'm going to ask. And I don't know them now. So I'm almost as excited and hope the audience is just as excited as me to hear some of these things. So Steve, let's start. Let's go right into what you're all about. I'm interested in Unipro Painting and your purpose there and what you're, overall trying to do. Let's brag a little bit about the company, maybe even about your efforts a little bit, and let's tell people what you're up to right now.
Well, thank you. As you stated, I'm with Unipro Painting. I've had the company for 28 years. We are a commercial painting contractor servicing the Northeast Ohio area. And I've been in this trade my entire life. And I literally mean from as early as probably 7 or 8 years old, going on to job sites with my father. At the time, he did some really, really large projects. And as a kid, it was always really intriguing to me to see the size and scope of what he did. So he did if you're familiar with Cleveland, there's the William G. Mather, which is the Cleveland Cliffs steamship down by the Brown Stadium and the Rock Hall. He had the contract back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, to paint all those ships. And he did them in the middle of winter. So as a kid, just to see the size and scope and what they did to go through to accomplish something like that, it really just drew me into the trade. And I was just amazed by it. I learned the craft from true craftsmen that at the time were just artists. I mean, it was almost a different trade than what we have now. Like the trade would show up in clean whites, and I mean dry cleaned dress shirts with creases in them. And it was a very proud trade. And it was a very, very well respected craft. And somewhere along the line, that seemed to change. And what I saw was the image of the commercial painting contractor wasn't the same as it was when I grew up, right? So I felt that it was my responsibility to create a company that was built on the standards that I learned back coming up as a kid. I want to be an example of what a painting company is supposed to look like for the next generation of tradesmen that come up, right? There's a big push now to get new talent into the trades. And I think that we have a responsibility to that next generation coming up. Say, look, you can run a professional company. You could conduct yourself as a professional. You can have a nice life and be able to provide for your family. That's one of the things my dad told me as a kid. He would say, come with me. I'm going to teach you this trade. You're always going to be able to provide for your family no matter where you go in this world. But I don't want you to do this for the rest of your life. He would always follow it up with, I don't want you to do it for the rest of your life. So that's kind of where I landed is I'm in this commercial segment, but I'm bringing with me the standards that I learned as a child in this profession to bring it along to be an example for the next generation to show that it is possible to have a respectable business and a career in the trades. And that's what we're trying to do here.
I'm interested in what you think was going on inside that 7 or 8 year old brain that allowed you to want to do this, where a lot of kids, I mean, when I was growing up and even still, we see that dad's doing a good job or mom's doing a good job, but that doesn't mean we want to follow in their footsteps. It almost makes me want to run away sometimes. What was it about you that saw a job well done that inspired you to want to come closer to it instead of kind of go in the other direction as some second generations will do?
And, that's a great question. I've never really thought about it that way, but if I had to answer you like right off the bat, I'd have to say it was pride. I mean, just to see what they were able to accomplish and to see the befores and the afters and to see that these men would all come together and the talent and the pride that they all had in what they did. I just drew to it. It was something that I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to learn more about. And I always wanted to, even at that early age, I'm like, they were craftsmen, right? So they all worked with the tools and they were always in the field and they always were on the job sites daily. But even at that age, I thought there's more here. I mean, this could be built out to the next level. And this could be something more than what I learned coming up, build it on those standards, but take it to a next level, take it to a more professional, image, if you will. So I think the pride in that craft and the tradition and seeing my uncles and my father, pour their lives into this career, there was just a lot of pride there. And I just wanted to continue that on.
And so talk to me then about what your dad meant when he said, I want you to learn this, but I don't want you to do it, because here you are doing it. Tell me a little bit about that transfer and how that went through.
That would be a great question to ask him. But I would have to say that, the struggles of being an entrepreneur, the struggles of being a business owner. And if you got to think about it, back at that time in the 80s and in the 70s, there was no Google, there was no internet. You couldn't just jump online and watch a YouTube video and anything. So, it was a lot of, lessons that were learned, the hard way, if you will. Right. So, I just think he didn't want me to have to struggle, like they did trying to make a living.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so talk to me a little bit about, in fact, is your dad still alive?
He is. Yes.
He is. Yeah. But when you said we have to talk to him, I was like, I don't know if that's possible. Maybe we'll have him on the show. Mine's not. And I think back to, he drove truck for a living and he taught me hard work and taking care of people and smiling and, things that I was able to use in my life in other ways, as opposed to what he did. And man, I tell you what, Steve, would I love to have him on the show. It'd be amazing to go back and just say, man, what were you doing there? What were you thinking there? And so it's a real blessing that you can talk with him. So then let's talk then a little about the struggles. So you kind of took over and things happened. Was it built for you, ready to just run over? Was there some changes that you needed to make during the transition from your father owning it to you kind of taking over? How was that transition? How did that take place?
Yeah. So, what actually happened was, my dad had his business, as I was coming up, and then, he had shut it down and he was working for a general contractor as a project superintendent. And I was going to school and, it was time for me to make that decision. What do you want to do with your life? I mean, you're out of high school, you're got some years behind you in college. What do you want to do? And I just kept falling back to, I think I want to just open a paint. I think I want to go back and make a run at this in the trades. So, that's what I did. So when I opened up 28 years ago, I opened the company up on my own, my
Mm-hmm.
wife. But real quick, like it wasn't long where, like the second job we sold, it was a monster. And I looked at him like, hey, man, I you got to come give me help here. It's kind of getting out of hand. So he ended up stepping away from the general contractor, came to work with me, and we worked together up until
Okay.
last year. Yeah, he just retired last year. So
Okay.
we were together for a long time, and I've learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot of and it's just paying attention to your parents. I mean, I tell my friends that, the older I got, the smarter my father became. When you were younger, you're like, yeah, okay, dad. Yeah. You don't really listen. But, as you learn these lessons, as you come along and as you grow up, you're like, okay, yeah, now that makes a lot of sense. Right. So, that's kind of how we started and got off the ground running.
Yeah. And so what's your purpose? Let's talk a little bit about what you're trying to do. We talked about doing things right. We talked about building something. But when you wake up in the morning, what drives you? What are you really trying to build? And what are you trying to do on a daily basis there at Unipro?
Well, I think the purpose again is as the craftsmen who came before me taught me about this trade, it's my responsibility to teach the next generation coming up. So our son's involved in the company. He's a project manager. The guys that work for me are younger, and it's kind of funny how that happens. It's everybody gets younger as you get older, but
Yeah.
it's our
Tell me about it.
responsibility for this next generation to show them that it is possible to have a successful career in the trade. So my purpose is to be that example for the next generation.
Yeah. And so what happens on an ongoing basis if you're having employees, you're having your son working in the industry, what happens to knock you off that? Because you're a business. Profit needs to happen. Customer satisfaction needs to happen. Along the way, struggles happen that knock you off of what your purpose is. Do you ever find that taking care of the business and making sure that you're inspiring your employees and your family, do those ever kind of contradict a little bit?
No, I don't think they contradict. If a situation like that were to arise, I'm very transparent, and I believe that that's part of our journey. If you do have to make some decisions and you have to abide by the standards that you've set, that's good. You may have to take a harder path at sometimes, but that harder path is always going to create an opportunity for you to learn and for you to get better. So I try to stick to the standards, being an employee focused company first. And if I have to make a tough decision, I'll stay on that path and stick to those standards.
So talk to me about some of the pressures that do come up in a daily basis. Maybe examples. Has it always been super easy for you? Yeah. That's a strange question for a successful. What's funny, Steve, is that people think that business owners, people that have never done this before. I'm one of them. People that didn't do it before I did it.
Yeah.
Come on. How hard can it be? You must have money coming out your ears. I mean, everything just is easy and you're running a business good for you. It's not. There's things that happen and they're hard. So what are some of the things that have come up in your daily basis that kind of knock you off path?
Well, I will tell you that right out of the gate, my wife and I had got married. We bought our first house. We had our son, and we opened the doors of the company in 8 months. So it was like right out of the gate, it was a whirlwind, right? So I was kind of conditioned to the pressure like early on, but I will tell you that once we grew beyond the size of the companies that I grew up in, and I needed to find different answers, and and again, at this time, there was no social media, there was no internet. So I literally would just find a couple of mentors that I looked up to who were farther down the path, even in different industries. And I would just go sit and have coffee with them and say, listen, this is where I'm struggling. And this is how do I get from here to where you're at? Right. And how do we make this work? One case in point in particular, we had just moved into the city that we live in now, and they were building a new elementary school, and our son was going to attend that elementary school. So we had an estimator working for us at the time, and we bid the project, and we were successful. And I went after it very aggressively because I wanted to plant our flag in the town that we lived in. My son was going to go to that school. It was like I had 1,000 reasons why I wanted the job. Well, we're in the job meeting, and we had to put this specialized coating in the hallways. And when we bid the job originally, it was just on the bases of the lockers. So it was about maybe a foot high along the bases of the lockers, and it wasn't that big, this part of the scope. And everybody keeps talking about this coating. I'm like, well, wait a minute, it's only on the bottom. They're like, no, the addendum. You didn't see the addendum. And I said, well, what was on the addendum? So,
Oh boy.
so it was, I had trusted an estimator that we had at the time that he had done a complete analysis of the bid documents before we submitted. And we were probably 2 years in, and the addendum, now we were putting the specialized coating on all the corridors, in the gymnasium, in the hallways, the cafeteria. So it was probably a $50,000, $60,000 hit that I had to take. I almost threw up right in the job meeting, right in the job trailer. There was a garbage can next to me. I literally almost lost it right there. But that was one of those moments to where, and it was the first moment, what are you going to do? Right? I mean, you're only a couple years in. You could wash your hands and walk away and say, I tried, it wasn't for me. Or you can just dig your heels in and just, you're going to work through this and you're going to figure it out. And that's what we did. And I think that kind of set the tone that, once we survived that, obviously there was lessons to be learned, right? But that was a real key point, I think, in our development, as far as, we're not going to walk away from something, even if we do make the mistake and it was ours and, we owned it. That was probably one of the biggest ones right out of the gate where, you're learning lessons. It's, baptism by fire.
I want to get back to how that made you feel at the time. You talked about wanting to throw up, and I want to talk more about that. But you do have a third option. You could have said, "No, sorry, I'm not doing it." You could have fought with the customer a little bit, and yet you owned it and took it. What was the thought process there that allowed you to go forth and maybe do what you felt was the right thing? Because that's what Purpose Under Pressure is all about. You could have chosen to say, "You know what? I didn't read it. You're out of luck. Take me to court," but you didn't go that way.
No, because then I wouldn't have been true to who I claim to be. Right. So if we're going to play in this field and we're going to bid this big commercial work and we're going to put ourselves out there as a professional company, it was ultimately our responsibility. And it was ultimately our mistake that we didn't review the documents completely. So it was ultimately my responsibility. So I had to own it. And it wasn't even my estimator. It was ultimately on me. Right. So I had to wear the brunt of that. So there wasn't an option. There was I couldn't walk away from it. I just couldn't do it.
And so what was the message that you took home to your wife? You're only in this a couple years. You probably didn't have that much saved up in the bank. You're probably still working through that. What was the conversation like? Because I know that had to hit your family a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I was still working in the field at the time. And I just explained what happened. I said, listen, this is how it went down. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to work through it. And we're going to come out on the other side. We'll be okay. And that's just what we did. I mean, there was a zero options mentality here. I have a lot of people that count on me, a lot of guys that work with us, their families. More importantly, I guess it was easier for me to have that conversation with my wife than to walk into my shop and tell the 14 guys in the field, hey, we're closing the doors. I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. So we put our whites on, we got dirty, and we got through it.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get through it? And what kind of promises did you make to yourself to make sure that would never happen again?
I'd say financially, it probably took us 2 years.
Wow.
2 to 3 to recover financially, right? Just from having to eat all the extra labor and all the material. And, but more importantly, it was just the lesson that you learn. And, that's what you have to do whenever you're faced with adversity or you're struggling. There's a lesson there. And, you may not learn it right now, but you need it to, at some point, step away and process it and find the lesson. If you don't find the lesson, then, you truly, it's a loss. But, for that to happen to me at that moment in time, I just knew that I can't assume, I can't second guess. It kind of just changed the way that I was analyzing anything that was coming out of the office from that point forward. And it was from the lack of systems. It was from the lack of, you don't know what you don't know. Right. So, up until that point, we weren't dealing with any projects of that size or that magnitude. So it was an eye opener for me moving forward that, we need to do things differently and there needs to be systems in place. And that's kind of how that unfolded.
One of the biggest problems we have as managers and leaders is sometimes we're not focusing on leading and we end up doing it for our sales team. How do we coach our people to help them figure out what self-limiting belief that they have that's holding them back from achieving the levels of success that they know they're capable of? Help them flush out what we call their own head trash, that thing that's holding them back. So work with your team, lead by example, watch your team achieve greater levels of success, and watch your team grow, and more importantly, watch your company and your business grow.
And I'm really, it's just amazed at the decision that you made. You said it now. It was because you couldn't go in and tell those 14 employees that they were done. You were going to keep this thing running. You were going to get them to help. You were going to keep it rolling. I'm wondering in the future, as things went along, were there other times when you made decisions that weren't maybe in your best interest, but were in the best interest of your employees, keeping going through economical times, hard times for your employees that you were able to kind of navigate them through?
This is a very cyclical business. As much as we try to minimize the ebbs and flows and try to keep it as streamlined as possible. But there are times in the construction trade where, it gets slow, right? And you'll have guys that, you're looking at the schedule and we've repainted our shop more often than I'd like to admit. But again, if guys are going to make the commitment to come and work here and be a part of our team and take away time from their family and other opportunities they could have to be here, then it's my responsibility to make sure that I provide them with work. So, if it means we're repainting the shop, then we're going to repaint the shop. If it means we're, going through and just things that we normally wouldn't do just to keep them working, that's what I do. Just because it's, again, I want to make sure that the employees are taken care of and that they know that I care about them.
Did you serve in the military, Steve?
No, I didn't. That's one of the biggest regrets I've had in my life is that, I think it was Desert Shield at the time when I was in college. And, my mom, a little Sicilian woman, was not like, I'm thinking about, no, you're not going there. So no, I did not go, but, our son's there now. He's in the Navy. He's in the reserves. Yeah. So, he's got 15 more days and he'll be back. Super proud of him. He came to us probably, it was in June. And my son's path is kind of unique. He got married at 18. He's still married a beautiful woman. And so he's been married 10 years.
Yeah.
And I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old granddaughter. And he came to me in June. He goes, Dad, this need for me to serve just hasn't gone away. He's like, I have an opportunity to go to the Navy and the reserves, and it's something that I really want to do. So I said, well, did you talk it over with your wife? And he said he did. So I says, well, listen, regret lasts a long time. And, I don't want you to have any regrets. So if this is something that you feel you need to do, then we're behind you. You go do it. So, he went there. Every leadership role that was available to him, he was awarded. He's going to graduate in 15 days. He's currently the best of the best in the entire school. So he's doing very, very well, and we're excited to have him come back. So I didn't mean to get long-winded on your question about the service, but I wanted to just throw that little plug in there for my son.
No, I'm glad you did. The reason I asked is that you seem to have the mentality of taking care of others, which in other folks, veterans that I've interviewed on this show, it seems to be always what they either took into the military or brought back out was this, everyone else is more important than me. And I'm going to make sure that we keep them afloat no matter what. I'm interested, your dad probably brought a lot of that to you. I'm wondering what you think you've brought to your son that allowed him to kind of make that decision. And I don't want you to worry about patting yourself on the back, but I'm wondering what you instilled in him. He's working for the company too. And I think it's important to talk about that a little bit.
I would hope that it would be discipline. I'm a pretty regimented kind of a guy. And he's very similar. He's the same way. And that came from both my parents, my mother and my father. My wife is, again, another, very strong woman. And I think my son picked up those traits from her as well. But I was disciplined early on out of necessity. And again, because of, this was the path that I chose. These are the people that I need to take care of. This is the direction that we're going. there's no option that this is what it's going to be. But I found that I carry a lot of those similar traits into other aspects of my life, outside of work. And I would hope that he sees that, the dedication, the hard work, and the discipline will get you far. It's inputs and outputs, right? It's what you put in is what you're going to expect to get out on the other side. So if you had to ask me, I would think that's what his answer would be.
I want to talk about your son one more time because I do know that you just did the polar plunge with him up in, I think it was in Chicago. Is that where you were?
Yeah, it was. It was in Chicago.
Tell me a little bit about purpose under pressure there. The purpose was to do it. The pressure is doing it. Like, how did you overcome that experience? And what do you remember from it?
Well, I was going up to visit him and he goes, "Hey, Dad," he goes, "bring your bathing suit." It's the middle of winter. I'm like, "All right, what's going on?" He said, "Well, it's Navy tradition up here that every year we do the polar plunge in Lake Michigan." And I talked to my chief and told him how you were with, your mental focus and how disciplined you are and your mindset and all that. And I asked him if he would allow you to go with us and as a civilian. And he said, yeah, he'd make an exception if I wanted to do it. So, we got there in the morning and it wasn't like the week before. It was like 10 below zero. And it would have been like, I don't know if they've even done it, but it was maybe 32 degrees outside. And we go into a tent and we undressed on into our bathing suit and we're standing outside in a line. And there was probably about 300 people that actually jumped. And, as you get closer, forward a row, they go. And we just jumped in. And I told my son, I says, look, there's going to be two types of people that are going to do this. There's going to be the group that's going to jump in, swim as fast as they can and get out as quick as they can and go get warm. And then there's going to be the people who are going to jump in, who are going to come up. They're going to take their breath. They're going to control their mindset and they're going to walk out and they're going to overcome that shock. And that's what we did. We walked out.
You walked out. Is there a lesson there? Is there an analogy there for business? That's the way you've run your business. You've had the ups, you've had the downs, but you're walking tall and you're walking out and you're not running from anything. Is there an analogy there that makes sense?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe you are. Maybe that's true. I mean, when you do get faced with adversity, it goes back to trying to find the lesson. And if you quit too early, and you see a lot of that, right? I mean, people they'll try something and the minute the adversity hits, and a lot of that has to do with, I think, the influence on social media. A lot of people see that, get rich quick and, buy this training coaching thing now. And, and it's instantaneous. And that's not the reality of it. This is a long, hard process, right? And, you have to have some resilience and you have to just have that staying power. And, when you quit something too soon, you robbed yourself of that opportunity. So yeah, you could very well be onto something there. I didn't really put that together, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm interested now. All that discipline and all that pride and all those things that you've worked so hard to build. What's next? There's challenges coming along the horizon that we don't even see yet, or maybe you're starting to look at as you're trying to continue this great growth that you've had. Kind of what are you anticipating that you're going to have to overcome in the short term, in the near term?
Well, I've actually given some thought to that because while my son was gone, I had to kind of step into his role and assist with our project management team here in running some of the work. And that's what Billy did while he was gone. But I would be remiss if I ignored the fact that the United States Navy saw the leadership qualities in him and gave him every opportunity to lead, and he'd excelled at all of them. So it has me wonder, as when he comes back, do I put him back in a project management role, or is there more of a leadership, position that I need to be grooming him for, because I believe he's there, right? So he's 28 now, and he's farther along at 28 than I was. So that's another reason why, we didn't really touch into this too great, but when I grew outside of the size of the companies that I was accustomed to, and I went to find mentors and I went to find people to get answers for, then I said, let me just try some coaching. I found some great coaches that really helped me and put me on a faster path to development that had I not done so, right? But my son and I were having a conversation about a year ago, and it just dawned on me that as far along as he is in his development, it's important for us to continue to get coaching, because I don't ever want to run out of wisdom, right? So I'm going to continue to work on myself and my personal development. So I'll always be able to teach him and our daughter and anybody else in the next generation that's coming up. And again, I kind of went down a rabbit hole there. I apologize, but him being farther along than I was is going to make me rethink the trajectory of us moving forward. I think he's ready to lead in a greater role. And that's kind of where my mindset is, we're going to scale, we're going to continue to grow. And I think he'll be an integral part of that. So that's kind of what we're working on here now.
It's a great answer to the question, because I think organization leaders they struggle with that. They're on a path. They're on a good path. Things are going well. And yet when you're trying to build an organization, you're only as big as good as your team and the weakest link. And you need to find ways to make them all better. Someone said once, I forget who it was. I don't mean to steal a quote, but I want hire people better than you. If you want to grow, hire people better than you, which if you're already employed with them, you have to make them better than you. You have to allow them that space. And that's easier sometimes just to stay the path and not worry about that to the detriment of your employees. So I'm glad you see that. And I think it's admirable that you're going to try to figure out a way to either step aside or make room or whatever you need to be able to do to allow that company to kind of grow for everybody. And so that's admirable.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might just kind of shirk that aside. We'll deal with that later. We'll talk about it, come back to me next year. Let's see how you do, because I'm too busy right now. So good for you on that. Hey, Steve, if people wanted to reach out to you and talk about maybe even leadership and employee development and things of that sort, but at least, of course, commercial painting and some of those opportunities that you bring to business, how would they do so? How would they get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way is to shoot me an email. My email address is very simple. It's steve@unipropainting.com. That's UNIPRO painting.com. You could look at us on our website. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. Any of those avenues, you'll be able to reach me right away.
Steve, I'll give you and the audience a little bit of insight into some of the things that I go through when I ask people if they'll do the show. Some people respond as you did. Some people are like, oh yeah, all day long, let's go. Some people are like, what am I going to talk about? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk to me for?
It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you were. And I hope that people can see, and I hope maybe even when you watch it, you'll see there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of pride, opportunity that you see that you want to grow into. There's a lot of direction to drive people and to be mission based. And I think our audience, our organization leaders, sales leaders, people out there that are watching will look at you and say, well, okay, he's just made out of it, and I want to be made out of it too. And I think that's good for everybody. So thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and giving us a kind of an insight into who you are.
Oh, Brian, no, I appreciate the time. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's Steve Spinelli. He is the president of Unipro Painting, and he's a good dude, and he knows kind of what he's trying to build, and he knows how to build it. And I don't think you want to get in his way. And so if you're interested in learning more about Steve and Unipro, reach out to him through those contact informations that he gave. Thank you to Steve for being a guest on Purpose Under Pressure. It's brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform on purpose, and Sandler will help you succeed in that direction. You will find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week, and we will see you next time on Purpose.